The lesson that we were given is lesson 5.4. In lesson 5.4, they talk about the differentiation of exponential functions. The first one that is learned is the product rule, as shown in the picture above. The next rule that is shown is the general power rule, shown in the picture above. The next rule is the chain rule, shown in the picture above. The final rule is the quotient rule, and this is also shown in the picture above.
F of x equals x minus 1 times e to the 3x plus 2. For the derivative, we will start off with the product rule, which is h of x equals f prime of x times g of x plus g prime x times f of x. So we will do the derivative of x minus 1 times e to 3x plus 2 plus x minus 1 times the derivative of e to the 3x plus 2. So from there, we will take the derivative of the x from x minus 1 and add it to the derivative of the negative 1 times e to the 3x plus 2, all added to e to the 3x plus 2 times the derivative of 3x plus 2 times x minus 1, which would be the chain rule. Next step is we will take all the common factors of the 3x plus 2 derivative, and we'll take the derivative of that. So 3 as a coefficient isn't being a derivative, so it's 3 times the derivative of x plus the derivative of 2 times x minus 1 times e to the 3x plus 2 plus the derivative from x minus 1, which is 1 plus 0, times e to the 3x plus 2. After all that, it becomes 3 times 1 times 0 times x minus 1 multiplied by e to the 3x plus 2 plus e to the 3x plus 2. And the answer comes out as 3 times x minus 1 e to the 3x plus 2 plus 3 to the ex plus 2. And after simplification, it is 3x minus 2 times e to the 3x plus 2. For 27, we're taking derivative of f of x equals e to the x minus 1 divided by e to the x plus 1. So we're going to do the quotient rule, which is derivative of the top times the derivative times just the bottom minus the top times the derivative of the bottom, all divided by the just the bottom squared. So that turns into be derivative of e to the x plus the derivative of -1, which is from the e to the x minus 1, multiplied by e to the x plus 1 minus the derivative of e to the x plus 1, which is from the derivative of the bottom times e to the x minus 1, all over e to the x plus 1 squared. Next, we're going to take those derivatives, so it's e to the x plus 0 times e to the x plus 1 minus e to the x plus 0 times e to the x minus 1 all over e to the x plus 1 squared. Finally, we simplify, we get e to the x times e to the x plus 1 minus e to the x minus 1 times e to the x all over e to the x plus 1. Even more, you could do e to the x divided by e to the x plus 1 minus e to the x minus 1 times e to the x over e to the x plus 1 squared. Simplify it even more, the final answer turns out to be 2 e to the x over e to the x plus 1 squared.